If any aspiring fighter is searching to become the best at mixed martial arts, then they've got to be just as amazing at wrestling. It's just how it goes. A lot of UFC champions come from some seriously awesome wrestling backgrounds, and in light of that, we'll be talking about some of the best wrestlers we've seen in UFC history. So without further ado, let's begin. First off, we'll start with number 8 on our list, and it's the Russian MMA, Khabib Nurmagomedov. If you were expecting us to name someone other than Khabib Nurmagomedov, well then, we don't know what to say to you. He's the best of the best when it comes to wrestling, so you should have definitely seen that coming. Everyone knows that no one can really compete with Khabib's excellent wrestling skills. It's just an unspoken fact at this point. Once in a fight, the 34-year-old landed a stunning total of 21 takedowns. Can you imagine? 21 takedowns in one fight? Yep. That's definitely a wrestling pro right there. In the ring, once the former lightweight champion gets his hands on his opponent, you just know the fight's about to end up on the ground. And while that's bad news for Khabib's opponent for the day, it's good news for Khabib himself because he knows he's going to give it his all and win that fight. Khabib's preferred on-ground style is the smothering technique, and it almost always makes his opponents tap out. What's more, the 34-year-old had a pretty neat record. He managed to hold an unbeatable 29-0 record. That's very impressive, you must admit. Up next in 7th place, it's two-division UFC champion George St. Pierre. Ah, the greatness that is George St. Pierre. Every UFC fan knows this name, and they know just how good this two-division UFC champion is when it comes to wrestling. He's among the pros for a reason. If we're going to talk about records, then St. Pierre has a pretty cool one to vouch for his amazing wrestling abilities. The man's known to hit 4 takedowns every 15 minutes, and if you know wrestling, you know how impressive that is. What's more, when in the ring, you bet St. Pierre is going to dominate his opponents no matter what. One of the many reasons for this dominating attitude is how he's able to tear through his opponent's defense strategies and immediately go for a takedown. It's almost like they don't see it coming. And there's no doubting the 41-year-old MMA's top control and versatility. It's what allows him to keep his opponents down for as long as he wants. Almost everyone agrees when they call the Canadian MMA one of the greatest UFC welterweight in MMA history. After all, he has won the UFC welterweight championship 3 times. Now for number 6, we'll talk about the decorated Greco-Roman wrestler Randy Couture. Well, look who we have at number 6 on our list. It's none other than Randy Couture. We've seen him compete in multiple games, and he's always delivered his best. And when it comes to wrestling, this man sure knows how to pack a punch. One of the main reasons Couture was really famous was how he was able to use a blend of both wrestling and dirt boxing whenever he was in a fight. That technique was unique to only Couture, and we loved seeing it. Talking about records, Couture could manage 2.78 takedowns per 15 minutes, and honestly speaking, that's not bad at all. In wrestling, it's as good as they come. Adding to that, the 59-year-old managed to win 6 UFC championships as both light heavyweight and heavyweight wrestler, and we've got to say, we're pretty impressed. What's more, he's one of 7 fighters who's managed to hold a UFC title in 2 different categories. Now that's a record not everyone can hold. Another evidence of his excellent wrestling skills is how he was chosen as an Olympic wrestling alternate, and in fact he's also served as a wrestling coach for Oregon State University. With that, there's no doubt Randy deserves a spot on our list. Moving on to number 5, let's take a look at Matt Hughes. Now we're going to talk about one of the best mixed martial artists out there, and it's Matt Hughes. He's one of those UFC fighters who has a background in wrestling. We just knew we had to include him in our list here today. A lot of you new MMA fans might not recognize Matt's name, but you should just trust us on why we're going to talk about him. So let's get into it. Matt has 2 UFC championships to his name in the welterweight category, and back between 2001 and 2006 when Matt was active, he was called one of the best welterweight fighters on the planet. What's more, you'll be pretty surprised to learn that the man has not just 1, but 2 records of winning 6 fights back-to-back. Now that's bound to drop your jaw to the floor. When we said we had a reason for putting him on this list, we truly meant it. Back then, Hughes was pretty known for being an amazing grappler in MMA, and his way of fighting rendered him so much stronger than most of his opponents in the ring. He had a record of 2.95 takedowns per 15 minutes, and perhaps the reason why he was so good at wrestling was that he took it up in both high school and college. Coming up in 4th place, it's none other than the American MMA Daniel Cormier. When you look at Cormier's records, you're bound to find yourself in awe. The man has achieved a lot in one lifetime, and frankly speaking, that's nothing short of brilliant. No amount of praise could be enough when it comes to Daniel Cormier. Talking about wrestling, what is it that this man cannot do? Freestyle wrestling, Greco-Roman wrestling, folk-style wrestling, you name it, and Cormier has given it all a shot. And not just a shot, he's pretty much dominated them all. If you haven't seen Cormier in any fights, then we're asking you to do it right now. His technique is absolutely brilliant, and the way he utilized his strength to deliver some of the most powerful takedowns in UFC history was nothing short of impressive. Now that's a man who knows how to use his might. There's no arguing when we say he's one of the best fighters out there. He's got a whole record to prove it. Not to mention, for number 3, we've picked UFC's greatest greatest fighter ever, Jon Jones. Oh, how could we not talk about Jon Jones? We've been talking about a lot of great fighters here, and it would be a shame if we didn't mention Jones on this list today. When Jones first began his UFC career, he pretty much used a lot of wrestling techniques. It's no wonder then that he ended up being one of the best wrestlers in the history of UFC. What's more, he even did some wrestling when he was in high school and college. When inside the octagon, this man had the best top control ever. You better believe us when we say that no one had the strength or agility to overcome Jones's top control. It was that good. Jones was pretty well known for getting his opponents to the ground as fast as possible, and then he would throw in as many elbows and punches as he could so his opponents could tire themselves up. And it always worked. Because he could finish fights in just one takedown, his takedown record is just 1.86 every 15 minutes, and considering how he finished his fights, it's actually a really good record. Next at number 2 is the man they don't talk enough about, Demetrious Johnson. They don't mention this name enough, and that's why we're bringing him up in today's video. When Demetrious Johnson was still with the UFC, not a lot of people would pay this man much attention. And that's just a shame, because when you look at his wrestling record, you're bound to get wowed by just how much this man could do. He's a former UFC flyweight champion, and that's not all. He's also managed to defend that title 11 consecutive times. Can you imagine? Yeah, now that's someone truly dedicated to what he's doing. Johnson took up little wrestling when he was in high school, and although it's such a shame he couldn't pursue it in college, he's still undoubtedly one of the best wrestlers in UFC history with his takedown record of 3.55 every 15 minutes. Last but not least, number 1 on our list is Cain Velasquez. With that, we've reached the end, and the final contender on our list happens to be none other than Cain Velasquez. We can't ever remember if Cain was ever taken down by his opponents when in the octagon, and that just goes to show you how this MMA fighter never gave anyone the chance to do that. Cain pursued wrestling when he was in college, and what's more, he won both a gold and a silver medal in the Pac-10 championships. Adding to that, the man was named the UFC heavyweight champion back in 2021. He has a pretty solid record of 5.13 takedowns every 15 minutes, and that's just absolutely amazing. That's a wrap for this video. Who's your favorite wrestler from our list? Let us know in the comments below. Be sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you at the next one.